My name is Scott Lyons. I'm your host for the Embodied Psychology Summit. This is Dr. Sue Johnson's class on emotionally focused therapy, and which you'll get to learn what that is very soon. I'll read Sue's bio. Dr. Sue Johnson is a leading innovator in the fields of couples therapy and adult attachment. She is the primary developer of emotionally focused couples and family therapy, which has demonstrated its effectiveness in over 30 years of peer-reviewed clinical research. Her best-selling book, Hold Me Tight, 2008, has taught countless couples how to enhance and repair their love relationships. And we're quite excited to have Sue back from the previous panel into now this class. And so thank you so much, Sue, for making time for us.
Hi, everyone. I wish I was with you in a big room. This always feels a bit like I dance Argentine tango, and Zoom feels a bit like dancing tango with big boots on. So, so I've got my big boots on. So, and the other thing that I do with Zoom, I tend to speed up. Somehow I feel like I have to give you a lot of information very fast. So I'm going to try not to do that in this one, because I actually have no idea how familiar you are with this strange thing called EFT, which my son calls extremely funny therapy. So, you know, I don't know how familiar you are. So I'm going to talk from the point of view that I hope that if you're not familiar at all, you'll be able to tune in. And if you are familiar, that you'll still find it interesting. What I'm going to do is I'll probably talk for, I don't know, just under an hour, but I'm going to try and put an exercise in there for us that we can do. And then I'm going to show you a little piece, 9 minutes of couple therapy. And if we have time, we can have some questions as well. Before I start, I want to say, for those of you that are familiar with my work, really my work has been in the couples field. I became obsessed with the fact that no one seemed to have any map for love relationships, and people certainly, no one seemed to have a map for how to work with couples in therapy. It has the reputation of being the most difficult modality of all, and I just became obsessed with it. And I'm known for couple work, and we have over 20 outcome studies of our EFT for couples right now, and we also have 9 process of change studies, and we have, I think we're the only people in the field, I know we are, who also get positive follow-ups, which is an interesting point that maybe I'll come back to. How on earth do you work with something as complex as a couple relationship, and 3 years later you send out questionnaires, and the change that you've created in 12 to 20 sessions of therapy has lasted over 3 years? And it's a profound change. It's a change in not just marital satisfaction, relationship satisfaction, it's a change in secure attachment. So that's a very interesting question. And if I don't answer it during this session, you can ask me again in the questions. Scott, you can ask me again and I'll answer it, okay? But I want to make the point that we have always worked with individuals and families as well. Always, always. We've just never talked about it very much. So last year, a book came out on emotionally focused family therapy. I'm an author on that book with my wonderful colleague, Jim Furrow. But last year, I also put out Attachment Theory in Practice with Guilford, where what I am talking about is that I would like you to get your head out of the idea that EFT is a couples therapy, and I'd like you to think about it in a different way. I'd like you to think about it as an attachment-orientated experiential therapy that is designed to create powerful, corrective emotional experiences in a session, in sessions, and that it works with individuals, couples, and families. I think what's important about the fact that we started with couples is that when you're working with a couple, you're working with two individuals who are stuck in certain ways of processing their emotions, defining themselves and defining other people, and engaging with others, engaging with their partner. And you're also working with a relational system, a dance that defines the dancers and has its own momentum. So you're working with both those things in couples. And that translates into, if you know how to work well with couples, you know how to go in and work with an individual on how they process and regulate their emotions. And you know how to help that individual engage in a new way with another person. And those skills translate across modalities. They translate to families. So what I'm really asking you to do, if you know my work, is to take your mind out of the fact that we're just for couples and think of us as an attachment-orientated approach to psychotherapy that focuses on creating corrective emotional experiences. And when I say that, I'd like to define it a little more, because corrective emotional experience is a cliche that's been around in psychotherapy forever. What exactly does it mean? Well, for me, it means that we teach you in EFT, and by the way, I always forget to say this, if you want to know about our trainings or our training tapes or all kinds of other things, you can go to the website www.iceeft.com. It's ICFT, which is kind of strange because I always think of EFT as rather warm, but it's ICFT is the website. And you can look at all our resources on there, and you can look at my personal website, Dr. Sue Johnson, and see me doing little chats about attachment and things like that. There's tons of resources out there for people, trainings all over the world. We have 65 affiliated communities, EFT communities all over the world. We train in Iran, we train in Egypt, we train in Australia, we train in Finland, we train all over North America, Mexico. So I invite you to go and look on the ICEF site and find colleagues who will be, there's lots of resources for you to learn this model. So what I want you to do is think about that we are trying to create corrective emotional experiences that literally are biologically based learning, that literally move your nervous system, that your nervous system responds to, holds on to, and remembers. And how can we do that? Are we magicians? No, we have a map. We have a map to people's inner emotional life, to the structure of their emotions and the structure of their relationships. And that map is attachment science. And if you read my book that came out last year, what I basically say in that book is that we've been talking about integrating psychotherapy for years, psychotherapy with science. And the bottom line is, from my point of view, there's really only one way to do that. And the way to integrate psychotherapy is to base psychotherapy on this incredible science of adult attachment. So I'm going to switch a bit, because I'm going to do that, tell you when I'm switching, because I'm going to try and give you a real sense of EFT here. What is EFT anyway? Well, EFT is a way of seeing. It's a way of seeing human beings as interdependent, relational. It's a way of seeing human beings as the very first and most primal instinct in human beings is not sex or aggression. It's the need for connection with another human being. It's the need to reach out and feel that there's another human being, and that human being sees you and cares, particularly cares about your pain, and is there for you when you need them. This is a particular way of seeing, and it's not a way of seeing that our culture has been very comfortable with around adults. We've sort of come to the point where we accept that that's the experience between, say, mother and child. But, and that's where attachment science started, looking at mother and child. And that attachment science has revolutionized the way we see children and parent relationships, at least in North America. It's revolutionized it. We no longer take our child and drop our child off at the hospital to be operated on and pick the child up 5 days later. People forget that in some places until the beginning of the 70s, this is what happened. We see children's vulnerability, we see their need for others. And it's only in the last 20 years that we've, really since the beginning of this century, that we've started to understand that attachment goes from the cradle to the grave. That as adults, we have these longings, and that we are not designed, our nervous systems are not designed to face the huge uncertainties of life alone. And from what I just said, if you're a clinician, let me take that way of seeing and give you what I think is the complete nugget of attachment theory as for a clinician. What that means is emotional isolation is inherently traumatizing for human beings. And if you try to deal with your vulnerability alone, there are only certain ways of doing that. And so many of them you get caught in a way or in where the way you protect yourself from your vulnerability becomes a prison in the rest of your life. It limits you. So what attachment says is not just we're better together, which is all over Canada right now in the middle of the pandemic, we're better together. People have got it in their windows. That's charming, but it's much more than that. It says we are being together with somebody, belonging, having that sense of belonging is like a fish being in water. That is our ecological niche. That is what we need beyond anything else. When we do not have that, you take the fish out of water, everything's going to go wrong. And any anxiety you have and any tendency to depression and any trauma you have, any disruption in your physical, emotional, and mental equilibrium is going to be put right over the top if you face them alone. And, you know, that's so basic to attachment, but I think it's something that our culture hasn't really recognized or taken into account. I still have people coming into my office telling me, well, I shouldn't need him. If I need him, there's something wrong with me. It means I'm weak. It means I'm immature. And if I tell him I need him, he'll despise me, right? And I'll have no power in the relationship. People still think that. So this is a way of seeing people. And it's a way of seeing people that gives primacy to their emotional experience. We're Rogerians, basically. I get my understanding of people from attachment science. I get my way of intervening from a mixture of attachment science and Carl Rogers. So, you know, I see people as orientated towards growth and as being blocked in that growth and development by the way they regulate their emotions, by being consumed by fear and anxiety, by shutting themselves down, by shutting other people out. And the job of the EFT therapist is to see those blocks, trust in people's ability to grow, go in, create safety for them, and create new corrective emotional experiences. Hey, I've just said it. That's it. We're all going to go for coffee now. Okay, I'll develop that a bit more. Okay. EFT is a way of seeing, and it's a way of intervening, and it's experiential. It goes with the flow, but at the same time, it's very structured. It's very directive. So the EFT therapist follows and leads, learns from their client. I learn from every client I see, but also follows the client, tracks the client's emotion, and then holds that emotion and evokes it again and helps the client go somewhere new with it. So it's very systematic, and that comes out of all the studies we've done. If you're going to do a psychotherapy study, you have to really know what you do when and why, right? So we've learned a lot from that. So it's a way of seeing, a way of intervening, but in the end, EFT is a way of being with people. To do EFT, you have to be willing to truly engage people. You have to be willing to be present with them, to show up emotionally. So, you know, I never let people call me Dr. Johnson. Right from the first phone call, I'm Sue. And I'm always leaning forward in my chair. In fact, I've hurt my back so much over the years because I'm always leaning forward to people. You know, I'm always giving them my presence. And that's about attachment too. I'm trying to create safe haven, secure base in my sessions so that people can go in to the scary places they don't want to go and explore. John Bowlby said many brilliant things. He's the father of attachment science. He started writing about families and attachment in the 1940s. But perhaps my favorite quote from John Bowlby was, he said, all problems that people have are about dealing with frightening, alien, and unacceptable emotions. Frightening, alien, and unacceptable emotions. Alien always fascinates me. It fascinates me when people say things like, do people say things like that? Can I say that to you? Do people feel this? I'm the only person who feels this. You don't feel this. You can't feel this. You're a successful therapist. You are never consumed with self-doubt. I'm the only person in the world to feel unconsumed but to feel confident is alien. I don't even know what it looks like. I'm always fascinated when somebody's partner turns and offers them love. And the person looks at me with a blank face and says, I don't know what to do with that. I have nowhere to put it. So frightening, alien, an unacceptable experience. We go with people. EFT is a collaborative, respectful therapy. We join with people, we go with them where they are. We join them where they are. And that's the other thing about attachment and Rogers. I wish Rogers and Bowlby had met. They never did. But I think Rogers would have loved Bowlby's statement that if you understand things from an attachment point of view, everything that human beings do, all the twists and bends they get themselves into, all the shapes they get into, to deal with their emotions, to deal with their anxiety, to deal with impossible situations, is perfectly understandable. That's a non-pathologizing statement. So your job as a therapist is to show up for your client, to be emotionally present, to be accessible, responsive, and engaged. And I'm going to get to those three things I just said again. Accessible, responsive, and engaged with your client, to create safety. And then to accept where they are. They have very good reasons for being where they are. To find out where they are, to join them there, to accept where they are. Of course, Veronica, I understand that you're confused by the label depression. I understand that. Of course, but you know, when I look into your face, all I see and what I feel in my own chest right now is deep, deep, deep grief and sadness. Is that what you call depression? You have such good reasons for feeling that, Veronica, don't you? The things you're crying for are worth crying for, aren't they? And all the people in your family, they love you, but they keep telling you that you should be happy and that you have no reason for this sadness. And they tell you that means you're depressed. But what I feel right now is, I feel your sadness, and you have deep, good reasons for being stuck in that sadness. Let's talk about the sadness. You accept people where they are, and then you move with them, and you help them move emotionally into a different place. And I'm going to talk to you about how to do that. So if you think about us all dancing with attachment figures all the time, even if they aren't there, we're dancing with them in our mind. We're dancing with our attachment figures in our mind all the time as mental representations. I invite you to think about an enormous amount of our mental and emotional processing is caught up in dealing with the music that's going on inside our body, the emotional music, and then dancing, moving in a way that's dictated by that music, and trying to dance with others as a result of that music. So there's a dance and there's a dancer, and the two become the same. The poet Yeats said, "Who can tell the dancer from the dance?" They merge together. What we try to do is change the emotional music that's going on so that people start to move differently, right, in the dance with others, and change the dance with others in a way that helps people feel more competent and worthy and grounded in themselves. That's what we're trying to do. I'm trying to give you EFT in a nutshell. Okay, so there's a lot of, I'm giving it to you in a nutshell, so I invite you to think about it and then to go to all the writing that we've done to look at what that means. And I'm trying to give you images for what it looks like in therapy. So what do I mean by the idea that Rogers and Bowlby would have got along so well? Well, Bowlby did not give us terribly good instructions for how to turn attachment science into intervention. He didn't. But what he did do was he gave us some vignettes of stories. The one I like best is that in one of his books, Bowlby talks about talking to a young woman who's been brought in because she's considered at risk for abusing her child. And the people who are around her want to give her training and want to talk to her about, is she at risk of abusing, teach her parenting skills, give her ways of controlling her behavior. And what the team do with Bowlby is they sit down and they talk to her about what it was like to be a child. And they talk to her about what happens with her daughter and how she sees her daughter and how she dances with her daughter and how she feels about herself as a mum. And they go back into the fact that she's never been parented. It's alien for her to be held and supported, and so she doesn't know how to give it. And they validate that, and they talk about how difficult it is for her, and they help her have sympathy for the child that she was, who was never able to feel held and connected to others. And as she has sympathy for the child that she was, she starts to see her own child differently, and she starts to be able to engage with her child differently. Now, that's, from my point of view, that's beautiful therapy, but all Bowlby did was give us a vignette. And I think Rogers would have resonated with that. Although I must say, when I tell you we're Rogerian, I have to admit that the last time I said that in one of my trainings, one of my colleagues said, actually, Sue, you are Rogerian, but in fact, you're like Rogers on steroids. So I don't know whether that's good or bad, but I see what they mean, because somebody says to me, well, you use reflection. How many times do you do it in a session? I do it all the time, constantly, forever. How many times do you use repetition of key emotional cues? All the time, in every session, forever, constantly. And so somebody said, that's Rogers on steroids. So perhaps it's accurate to think that it's Rogers on steroids. I want to go back for a moment to what I said about that. You could think about EFT as being about you being emotionally present with your client being emotionally present with themselves and with other people. You can think about it that way, right? What do I mean by emotionally present? What I mean by emotionally present is what Bowlby said is the key elements in a secure bond, the key defining elements in a secure bond, the elements that define all the other variables and have that secure, the structure, that secure bond, that connection with other people are emotional accessibility, openness, responsiveness, and engagement, ARE. The main question in distressed relationships is not conflict. It's not differences in personality. Everyone has conflict. Everyone is basically incompatible with everyone else. We all have differences. That's not the issue. The issue is emotional disconnection and the loneliness that is traumatizing for human beings and is unbearable in a relationship where your needs for belonging are constantly primed and not answered. So the key question in our relationships, in our attachment relationships, where we define ourselves is, are you there for me? A-R-E, are you accessible, open, responsive? If I call, will you come? And engaged, will you stay engaged with me? Are you there for me? And it feels to me like that attachment research and theory helps us a lot in understanding how the therapist is with the client. I'm A-R-E with my client. As a person, as a professional, but as a person, I'm present with them. And I'm trying to access parts of themselves and get them to be present with different elements of themselves, with their own emotions, with their own stuck, vulnerable places. And I'm trying to help them do that with other people. So I'm trying to give you images of EFT. I'm going to slow down a bit. Let's just summarize. What does attachment tell us about human beings? Our primary need is for a certain kind of safe emotional connection with other humans. This is our primary need. We need this like we need oxygen. It's traumatizing when we don't get it. When we don't get it, we don't have many strategies for dealing with that. We either ramp up our nervous system, ramp up our calls to other people, ramp up our searches for connection, our desire to be connected with other people, to please other people, or we shut down and numb out. That's it. That's the repertoire, because attachment develops when we're very young. We don't have all kinds of sophisticated ways of dealing with our emotions. So that's our basic longing. And if we get that longing met, and that longing is being met is always on a continuum, of course. It's not an absolute, it's never a constant. We have a safe haven. We have a place to go to deal with our vulnerability in a functional way. We have a place to get our emotional balance. If you watch securely attached people, if you watch a couple at the end of EFT, okay, if you watch securely attached people, what you see is emotional balance. They still hurt. They still lose their balance. Sometimes they can get it back. So you get secure, safe haven. It gives you your emotional balance. That's what a mother gives a child, right? When a mother's there for a child, helps regulate a child's affect, helps name and order that affect. In EFT, we go into emotion with people, we hold it with them, we stay with it, we evoke it, we keep it going and alive, and we also order it. We order it just by being there. We order it in the way we help people deal with their emotions. So we create safe haven. And we create secure base, which is we create a grounding place where people can go out into the world, meet others, explore who we are. Bottom line is, if you have safe connection with another human being and you're not facing your vulnerability alone, if you have that secure connection, then the world is no longer so frightening. 90% of the glucose in your brain isn't going to vigilance, and you can explore and play. So we offer people safe haven. We offer them safe haven and secure base, A-R-E. I want to just stop for a minute and stress how physical this is, because this is, there's some word called embodiment in this conference, I think, as I remember. Okay. I want to just say how physical this is. There's a man called Prophet. He studies visual perception. Why am I interested in anything on visual perception, for goodness sake? Because what he does is he gets people to stand and calculate the size of a hill, the height of a hill. Your brain is an amazing prediction machine. It takes into account your energy resources, and your stress level, even in things like visual perception. So he stands people in front of a hill and he gets them to calculate how high the hill is. And then he gets a friend that they trust to come and stand beside them, and they see the hill as lower. That's right. Because somehow the calculation the brain makes to climbing the hill and looking how big it is and how difficult it is changes when you have someone standing beside you. He lets the people stand in front of the hill alone, and he puts rocks on their back, and they see the hill as higher. He has a friend come and stand beside them, and it cancels out the effect of the rocks, and they see the hill as lower. I am not talking in metaphors. I am not talking in abstract scientific ideas. I'm talking about attachment as a biologically based theory of development of personality and relationships. I'm talking about a physical reality. So I want to say that. And ARE is a physical reality. It's not just having a good alliance. We talk about alliance as a general variable in psychotherapy. I don't know what you're talking about. I create a very particular kind of alliance in EFT, and it does not look the same as the kind of alliance that happens in CBT. The goals are completely different. So attachment tells us that the most functional way that we can be is something called securely attached. This means that we've basically had some experience in our lives that we've internalized into a felt sense that we are worthy, that other people care about us and we are worthy to be cared for, and that we are competent in dealing with our inner reality and with other people. And I want to give people, in every session I do, I tell people explicitly in some way, you are worthy, you are competent, you can do this. And when I do that in EFT, I'm not saying you can do this as a future thing. I am saying you can do this, you just did it. Look at what you just did, right? So we're talking about giving people the secure sense of secure attachment, this sense that they belong in the world, that they're grounded, that they can listen, their needs and feelings are acceptable, they can listen to their needs and feelings, and they can engage with others. When people don't have that, they go into anxious attachment, where they're always dealing with this overwhelming emotion, and they're overwhelmed by it, and their nervous system is ramped up. They're always looking for reassurance from other people, or they go into avoidance, where they're shutting down and numbing out. So that's what attachment basically says. When it translates into EFT, there are 3 stages in EFT, just like most therapies, whether you're dealing with individuals or couples. What do we have in EFT? We have a stabilization phase. If I'm working with a couple, it's de-escalating the negative pattern between the couple. The normal one is one person feels disconnected. They start to demand. They start to say, where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Respond to me. That can sound very aggressive and critical. The other person feels rejected, which is overwhelming for human beings. It's a danger cue for your mammalian brain. And that's not a metaphor either. I can direct you to the research. It's a danger cue for your mammalian brain, and you shut down and move away. The more you shut down and move away, the more disconnected the other partner feels, the more they flip out. That is the basic story, the dominant story of relationship distress in every society and culture that I've ever come across in our teaching. We de-escalate that pattern. So the first stage of therapy is we de-escalate that pattern. And one of the ways we do that is we show people the pattern, we show them the dance and how they are caught in the dance. The enemy becomes the dance they're caught in. And the fact they're dealing with their vulnerability alone, not the other person. That's a real shift. So in couple therapy, in individual therapy, in family therapy, the first stage is stabilization, or de-escalation of negative stuck patterns of dealing with your emotion and engaging with other people. The second stage of EFT is creating new ways, not just getting you unstuck from negative ways, but creating new positive ways, more open ways, more functional ways of dealing with your own emotions, dealing with other people, and engaging with both of those things. And in couples therapy and family therapy, that looks like bonding moments. Okay, it looks like, what does it look like? It looks like an angry, aggressive woman who tells me, I don't know why I'm here, people are disappointing, he's disappointing, he's never been there for me, he promised me he would do the cupboards by 4 o'clock on Wednesday, and he didn't do them until Thursday at 5. And what that means is, she doesn't say this, but what that means is I'm alone in the universe forever. I can never depend on anyone, and I'm abandoned, and this person doesn't care about me. That's how she puts it together. That woman in session 12 of EFT in couples is able to turn to her partner and say, I'm always afraid. Every breath I take, I'm afraid. I'm always looking for you to turn your back on me. That's what I remember. That's what I have in my head. That's what happens in relationships. I'm just waiting. I'm just waiting. I don't know how to take it in, even when you give me love. I'm always afraid. So I push and push and push and push. I say, reassure me, reassure me, reassure me. And I only notice the times when you don't do it, because I'm so afraid. I feel so alone, and so I can't believe that you really want me. This woman says that to her partner, and her partner turns and holds her and listens to her and soothes her. And that is a corrective emotional experience at a primal level, and that shifts her sense of self, her sense of other, and her safety in the world. That's what it does. And she will not forget that. That's not something she has to do homework on or practice to keep going. Her nervous system will hold on to that moment. That is a truly corrective emotional experience. And that is why we get good follow-ups in EFT. Right now, we're doing the first study of emotionally focused individual therapy, right? But and the next one we'll do another study of emotionally focused family therapy. We've done tons of studies of couples, but that's what I mean by a corrective experience. That's in stage 2 of EFT. We restructure in a positive way how people engage their own emotions, how they engage other people. We create powerful, primal, core bonding events or moments of connection with self that have existential significance, that lead into what Rogers called existential living, right? We want people to, we grow people. And then we have a third stage of consolidation. So what do we do in EFT? How do you do all this, you say, Sue? How on earth can you do all this in the short-term therapy? How do we do all this? Well, we have a set of micro interventions that come mostly out of Rogers, like reflecting people's realities, especially their emotions, asking evocative questions, like that is focused on experiencing, not information, experience, not explanation. Like, you know, what's that like for you? What's happening in your body right now? When does this happen for you? How do you do that? What happened just then? What happened when your partner said this? Evocative questions. We heighten emotion by reflecting it, repeating it, using images, picking up clients' words. We call them clients' handles. I'll show you one on a tape in a minute where the client says, I'm blindsided by her. I'm blindsided in my dance with her. We heighten, we do all these things. We interpret. Interpretation in EFT is you move from uncomfortable to a little scared. That's an interpretation. It's very small. Okay, so we focus on patterns between people and emotional patterns within people. We have micro interventions, but the EFT therapist basically follows a core set of macro interventions, 5 moves, and it's called the EFT Tango. And I can manage therapy, but technology, I have a very insecure attachment to technology. So I'm now going to take the most enormous emotional risk and try to go and show you the EFT Tango. The reason it's called tango is very simple. I dance Argentine tango. By the way, you can't dance Argentine tango in a pandemic, and that really messes with your head if you're obsessed with it. But just that piece of useless information for you. I'm going to share my slide. And I'm going to show you the EFT Tango. What do we do? Whether we have an individual, a couple, or we're working with a family, we usually work with subsystems in families, like we'll see the family together twice, and then we work with the father and son, the mother and son, the mother and the father, the mother, the father, and the son. So what do we do? Move 1, we create safety, safe haven, secure base. We go in and mirror and reflect present process. This is within. How is this person dealing with their emotions? When they're deep in their emotion, how do they what are the definitions they come up for themselves and other people? Are they shutting down? Are they moving away? Are they dismissing their emotion? Are they getting caught in their emotion and completely dysregulated and then kind of giving up? Right? What are they doing? And what are they doing with you in the session? And what are they doing with their partner? How are they interacting? So what would that look like? I would say to a couple, could you help me? Is this what happens in your relationship? You feel, what did you say? You feel you're all by yourself. So you're all by yourself. And what I notice is that when you talk about that, first of all, you look very angry and your body goes very tight and you lean forward. But then after a few minutes, you look down at the floor, your eyes fill with tears, and it looks like there's a moment of real pain. And then you come back into anger. I'm reflecting her inner reality. And when you come back into anger, what you do is you kind of push your partner, you kind of poke him, and it's almost like you're angry and he hears criticism, but you're sort of poking him. It's almost like you're trying to get him to respond to you, to see you, to turn towards you. And she says, yes, yes, that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to get him to turn towards me, but he never does. Right? So she smacks him. She comes out and smacks him. I say, and could you help me? What you do, partner, is you, for a moment when she talks to you and she's angry, I see this fleeting sort of movement with your eyes where it's almost like you're looking for a way out of here, and then it's like you stare at the floor and your face goes very still. And it sort of looks like you've gone, you're out somewhere, you kind of shut down. And he says, yes, I do, I shut down. And I say, yeah. And when you shut down, you shut her out. And the more you shut her out, the more frantic she becomes, the more angry, the more she's caught in her anger. So you spend your whole life sort of testing him, seeing if he's going to respond to you. And then when he doesn't, you move into trying to push him. But deep inside, you have all this hurt and you feel very alone. And you spend your whole life waiting for her to criticize you and getting ready to run because it's so painful for you to be criticized by your partner. And he says, yes, I don't know what to do with that. I say, I understand. This is very, very difficult. This is all descriptive. I've described the cycles they're caught in their affect, and the cycles they're caught in their relationship. Move 1. Move 2, I go into affect assembly. And I want you to take the word assembly literally. Move 2, I go into affect assembly. What does that mean? It means, and I did consider putting up another slide, but I was intimidated, so I'm not going to. I'm just going to leave you with this one. So what that means is There are 5 elements in any emotional experience. This is Magda Arnold, 1960. I've never seen anything better, so we use it. Trigger, basic perception, very fast. Pleasure, pain, dangerous, safe, bad, good, like that. Trigger, right? Basic perception, body response, meaning making, action tendency. Action tendency. Emotions literally move us in the dance with other people. They are the music. They structure our key interactions with other people. But when I go into affect assembly, I'll use those. So I'll go in with him and I'll say, could you help me? I'll do the trigger. What happens to you? My sense is the most difficult moment for you here is when your wife turns and gets angry with you. And what did she say? She said, it's such a big disappointment, she said. Could you help me? My sense is you hear that you're such a big disappointment. Is that right? And he says, yeah, I hear that all the time, you know. I hear that all the time. It's always been that way. I'm fine with that, really. I'm fine. I can deal with it. And then I slow down. If you want to deal with emotion, you have to go soft and slow and specific. You drop your voice, you go soft, and you get specific. Vague emotion is overwhelming. Specific emotion can be ordered and handled. So you say, I'm sorry, could you help me? You telling me you're used to this, but could you help me? My sense is that for most people, this is very difficult. There's kind of a moment where for most people, this feels bad. Basic perception, I'm giving it to him. It's almost like, he says, well, it's dangerous. I say, oh, yes, it's dangerous. He gives me his perception. And how do you feel in your body? Well, see, he's told me he's fine, but I've just gone with what I know, because attachment gives me a map to people's basic suffering and longings and needs and the way they translate that into how they are with other people. So I have a map. I know what's going on with him, okay? So I say, and what happens in your body when you see that look on her face? Is it the look on her face? He said, no, it's not the look on her face. It's the voice, it's the voice. I said, oh, I understand. So the trigger, we've made the trigger more specific. What do you hear in her voice? He says, I hear this enormous, it's more than disappointment. I hear this anger that I can never satisfy. I'm never going to please her. In my body, I feel this weight on my chest. I can't breathe. I feel the weight on my chest. I'm never going to please her. He's giving me the meaning. And what do you want to do as you say this? I want to get the hell out of here. I want to run. My whole body wants to run. I say, yes, I understand. And I put that all together with him and for him. And I want him in it. I want him in it. And I say, that must be so difficult for you. I hold him. But listen to my voice. Please believe me, if you do this beautifully, technically, and you go high and fast with your voice, it doesn't work. Please believe me if you say, you know, what I'm understanding is that I think the trigger is her voice. Is the trigger her voice? I think it actually is, yes. And then it must be the meaning you make. I think it doesn't work. And the only way you know whether you do that or not is to watch your own tapes, by the way. I used to watch my own tapes and weep at the beginning when I was a therapist. They were so bad. Okay. So I thought I knew what I was doing, but I wasn't doing what I thought I was doing. So you go in and you do affect assembly with him and you say, this is so hard for you to feel. And you repeat it so that he can start to order it and put it together. And he says, yes. I say, have you ever talked to her about this? And he looks at me like I'm a crazy person. Like he's never even felt this, let alone talked about it. And he says, no. And I say, good. So could you help me? What is the most important part? What's the most important part of what we said for you? It says, I can never please her. I'll never please her. So I give up. I say, I understand. Move 3. I take that new music, that new emotional music that he's put together with me, and I turn it into an interaction with a key significant other. Could you turn and tell her, please? Could you tell her? I do shut down, I do move away, because I have this terrible sense that I can never please you, that I'll never be enough. Could you tell her? And he says, yes. Or sometimes he says, no, I could talk to you about it, but I'm not telling her. And then you go with the flow and you say, aha. So could you turn and tell her, please? I can talk to Sue about this with you listening, but somehow it's too hard for me to look into your face and tell you. I've just sliced the risk thinner. And of course, when he does that, he is starting to let her in. So he turns and he tells her about his fear on whatever level he can manage it, because you stay within people's window of tolerance. Choreograph new engaged encounters. He takes a new risk. He comes out with a new way of dealing with his emotions, an expanded repertoire, if you like, okay? And step 4, processing the encounter. Say, what does it feel like for you to say that? I'm always amazed that people say very painful things or very scary things, and when you ask them what it feels like to say it to their partner, they say it feels good. 9 times out of 10, because they've ordered their emotion. They feel more in control, and it's their truth, and they feel safe with me, so they say it feels good. Then you process it with the other person. Sometimes the person can hear it, sometimes they can't. And if they can't, you help them with that. You look at the blocks to that. What's getting in the way, right? Sometimes people are at first too angry to hear, or they're too hurt to hear, or they're scared to trust again. So you process the encounter, and then you integrate and validate. And when I talk about integrating and validating, I don't mean saying, this is, what you've done here is very, very good indeed, and it really impresses me. That's a waste of time. I want you to validate. You repeat what's happened and you say, look at what you just did. Now, here, change isn't something that happens in 3 months' time. Look at what you did here. My God, you put your emotions together in a new way. You faced your fear. You turned to your partner. You risked with her. My God. What I tell people is, you validate the way you validate your young child or your dog. Do you know what I'm saying? Not your friends. I have a puppy, okay? When she comes to me in the park, when she rushes towards me with a ball in her mouth, she's a whippet, so she gets up to about 30 miles an hour. She's got to be able to come to me, or this dog isn't going to survive. So I call her and she comes. She rushes towards me. I don't say, jolly good dog. I don't. I say, oh, you're such a good dog, right? Like, yes, and I stroke her, and she wiggles, and I stroke her some more, and we play. So I say to people, look at what you did. And I'm genuine. I'm not playing funny games. I'm not being incongruous here. I'm genuine, because I'm impressed with the amazing risks that people can take when you give them some safety and some direction. I say, look at what you just did. That's amazing. And look at you. He shared with you, and it was hard for you to take in. And at first you didn't want to respond, but you tried your best. You tried your best. And you told him it's very difficult to hear. If you're working with an individual, this is the same. The difference is in step 3, where you are encountering parts of themselves or the therapist or the imaginary attachment figure they have in their head. So step 3 with an individual goes, could you close your eyes, please? Could you tell your father? Could you tell your father? The only way I wanted your love so much, and it was the only thing that was keeping me alive. And so when you were angry, all I could do was just shut down, totally shut down. I couldn't let go of your love, and I still can't. I want you to love me so badly. I can't. I'm shutting down. I'm shutting down in my whole life, right? Could you tell him, please? People talk to their attachment figures. You carry them around in your head all the time. I don't know if you know what I mean. My main attachment figure was my father. And when I was 22 in the middle of the Atlantic on a piece of steel that we call a boat, tossing around, coming to North America all by myself with $60 in my pocket, not knowing anyone. We're in the middle of a storm, and my brain said, about now would be a good time for a panic attack. You know, this is pretty appropriate to do it now. And this other voice, and it's the voice of my father. He was a sailor. He said, Sue, if ever you're in a storm, here's what you do. You put your feet wide. You feel what's underneath you. You look at the horizon and you breathe and you listen to my voice. And my voice tells you, you're strong. You can deal with any storm. You just put your feet wide, feel the ground underneath you, look at the horizon and breathe. Thank you, Daddy. I did that fine. And I landed in North America, right? So that's kind of a, why am I telling you that? I can't even remember why I'm telling you. Oh, yes. It's about, and by the way, that's about using an attachment figure as a resource. And I also do that in therapy. To my traumatized lady, I say, tell me a time when you felt safe with another person. She can't. I said, tell me a time when you felt whole and powerful. She tells me about being on the balance beam as a gymnast. And did anyone see you do that? She says, yes. When I came off the balance beam and rotated in the air, I'd land and my coach would look at me and he was safe. Aha! You learned how to fly and you looked into your coach's eyes and you saw you were safe. And we go back to that moment as a resource. But I also get her to close her eyes and talk to her mother and say to her, how could you? How could you watch our father rape us all and not do anything? How could you? And I get her to talk to me when she's ashamed and she's sure that she's going to see shame in my face and she's looking at the rug. I say, can you look up at my face? What do you see in my face? Or to my client who says, I'm the only human being in the world who constantly fights this self-doubt. And I say to him, is that right? Would you like to ask me about self-doubt? He says, well, you don't have self-doubt because you're a famous therapist. I said, is that right? Would you like to ask me? He says, all right, then, do you have self-doubt? I said, yeah. Well, you know, what I'm going to tell you is I just wrote this book that is kind of like the epitome of what I believe. It was attachment theory and practice. And it's taken me 30 years to write it. And basically, and I've written it and it arrived from the publisher and I looked at it and for 5 minutes, for full 5 minutes, I said to myself, well done, Sue. And then I thought, it was probably a waste of time. It's not going to have any impact. People don't want to read it. You really, what on earth were you doing it for? You probably could have done it better. Maybe you should have done it this way. And not only that, it's not really going to make any difference to anybody. So there. And he bursts into tears. What have I just done? I've said, you're not alone. You're just a member of the human race. You're with me. We doubt ourselves all the time, us human beings. We have impossible expectations for ourselves. We can never meet them, right? And you're not alone at all. And he bursts into tears. And he says, oh, so you mean that you do that too? I said, yes, I do that too. And it really hurts, doesn't it? And he says, yes. And he weeps again. Right? So that's an interaction with the therapist. So move 3 in individual therapy looks like that. But this is what the therapist does in every session. Sometimes you don't get through very much of it. For my trauma client I'm working with right now, the first 10 sessions were all in number 1. Because every time I tried to even touch affect, she would veer off into another vague, confusing story. I had to wait for her and gradually wait. Now our sessions move between number 1, moving in 1, 2, and sometimes touching on 3. So she's coming along. But for lots of people who aren't, her PTSD level is enormously high. On all the tests, she comes out right on the top. For other folks, I can start doing this on a superficial level, perhaps almost at the end of session 1. This is what we do all the time in all the stages with different intensity and pace, and we adapt it to our client. Now I have to choose between giving you an exercise and showing you a piece of tape. And I think what I'd like you to do, because this conference is, I'd like us to do the exercise. So what I would like you to do is I'd like you to find a comfortable place to sit. And hopefully you're in a place that it's quiet, because I want you to focus in on your inner reality. And if you're comfortable, I'd like you to close your eyes, but if you don't want to do that, that's fine. So what I want you to do is I want you to think of a moment where you're triggered. And of course, the level is up to you. It can be very triggered or just slightly triggered. Right now, in the middle of this pandemic, I think everybody's triggered all the time. But anyway, I want you to think of a moment when you're triggered, when you're off balance, when you're uncomfortable. Somehow, there's some sort of vulnerability. Maybe you can't even put your finger on it. Maybe you can try and feel it in your body. When I'm starting to feel this way, I always feel it deep down in my gut. There's some sort of little churn that happens. That's the sign for me that this is happening. This sort of squeezing of my gut somehow. Right? You have other ways. Perhaps you hold your breath. Perhaps you go more still. Perhaps your breathing changes. Perhaps you feel a weight somewhere. I want you to think about the ways you usually deal with that. They can be functional or dysfunctional. How do you usually deal with that? Do you change the subject in a conversation? Do you change your focus? Do you distract yourself? Do you try to comfort yourself by phrases? Do you go and have a stiff drink? What do you do? Now I want you to imagine a wiser, stronger, safe person. Hopefully you have someone like that, or have had someone like that in your life. Hopefully you have. A wise, even for a moment. What I've learned is we're very adaptable. Sometimes we can find glimpses of wiser and stronger, safe other, even in a relative we only saw occasionally, or in moments with a friend. A wiser, stronger other. And I want you to see them. They can be someone, a parent, they can be a friend, it can be a superficial or it's up to you. Or a deep relationship. I want you to see them, I want you to see their face. I want you to breathe and spend a moment seeing their face. When I think about my husband like this, I think about the wrinkles around his eyes, the straightness of his nose, his beard, and I think about his voice, because his voice always comforts me. It's deep. Oh. I want you to see that person, and I want you to see them look at you. And they see the vulnerability. They see your hurt. They see your discomfort. They see it. And they care. They care about your pain. And I know they're going to say something to you, something short. I want you to hear what they say. When they see your pain, what they say to tell you they care. It's often a very simple message. It's not usually a solution to the pain. It's telling you they're there, you're not alone in it, that you matter to them, that your pain matters. And I'd like you to see if you can take that in. And it's okay if you can't. Just notice if you can't. If you can't, you have very good reasons for not being able to take that in right now. And sometimes we can't. Sometimes somebody offers us comfort and solace or a grounding place to be, and we can't accept. Just notice if you can't, but if you can, I want you to take it in. I want you to notice how that feels in your body. So what we just did was we did a little move 3 on whatever level was comfortable for you. What we just did was something organic. We don't have to make it up in any clever system of therapy. It's the way we're wired. It's the basic way our nervous system longs to be comforted by connection with another that we feel on a biological level. This way of comforting works. It gives us emotional balance. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift. Please forgive me, I'm making these shifts. I'm asking you to come with me, okay? Because we do 4 days in our basic trainings and I have 90 minutes, okay? So I'm asking you to shift a bit, right? And if this all seems like complete craziness to you, I invite you, the best way into my work is just go read Hold Me Tight. Okay, it's about relationships, and then look at some YouTubes, maybe on my site or something, to get a feel for what I'm talking about. So I'm going to shift and I'm going to try and show you a little piece of therapy. I'm going to show you a refugee couple. The lady is very angry. She's become very depressed. She came here. Society did not make space for her. She could not find a job. She broke her arm. She's in chronic pain. She feels completely abandoned by him, so she's getting angry. He has a South African accent. You need to concentrate a bit to understand him in the beginning. And what he's done, he was accepted by society. He got a big job. And of course he got amazingly immersed in his job. And what he does is he goes in his head and he rationalizes and he tries to solve her problems in practical, goal-orientated ways. And she's becoming more and more depressed, and their relationship's going downhill. And this is a consult I did at an externship in EFT, our 4-day training. We always do live sessions in our trainings. And this is so I've never met these people before. And this is 9 minutes, is a small edit in the middle. I'm going to go in and try and show you me working with this man's emotion and bringing him out into a new interaction with his partner. I'm going to show you move 2 and 3. I hope, I always have to say, I hope here. Let's see what happens. Wait a minute.
Two of you, you're balancing, dancing, you're kind of new dance. Takes a little bit of time. It's okay for it to take some time. But I want to stop here a minute. It must be hard for you. The sense I get is you really care about this lady, right? It must be hard for you then when you see her getting sad, getting depressed, right? Getting irritated with you, and you're trying to figure this out. You're trying to figure out what's going on, but you don't really know what to do. That must be very difficult. It is. Because the odd times I think when we expect, and you know, you think a little bit about it, you can probably uncover weird mechanism. I think for other episodes, that just blindsides me. It blindsides you. That's a powerful word you just used.
I don't see it coming at all.
I get it. When you're blindsided, it's like suddenly something awful is happening that you couldn't predict, that you don't understand, that you never expected, and that's a hard feeling. Blindsided is a very powerful word, yeah. So suddenly, when your lady's upset with you, particularly if she gets irritated with you, right? That's when you get the message most clearly. You don't see it coming. You don't understand.
You know, and I think I do express my frustrations, especially when I don't understand it. I might say, you know, how did this happen? And I think that's the part of the trying to talk you out of the sadness or the irritation, and again, it just exacerbates the situation.
Yeah, but somehow blindsided. You help me. Blindsided is a difficult place to be. It's almost like suddenly, you know, I think of being blindsided in a car. I think of suddenly the whole world changes when you're blindsided. Right? You have no solid place to stand. Suddenly you can't predict anything.
Right. It just feels like your foundation that's unsettled.
Suddenly there's no secure place to stand, right?
Yes, it's just an
suddenly your lady's really angry with you.
Yeah, it's very unsettling.
And your lady's angry with you, and it's almost like you've done something wrong, and she's upset, and you don't know how to fix it. Am I getting it?
Yeah.
That's a hard place to be. That's kind of alarming, yeah?
Yeah, very.
Is that an okay word?
Yeah.
Alarming?
Yes.
I hear you, Craig. That is a really hard place to be. And I'm remembering something that Mark said to me. You used a word. I think you used the word that somehow in these moments you feel a sense of doom. Impending doom. Do you remember using that phrase?
Yeah, I think it sounds familiar.
Yeah, that's one of. So suddenly, when she's upset with you, it's like alarm bells. Suddenly, you don't understand. You don't know what's going on. You don't know how to do anything about it. Your lady's upset with you, and you have this sense of impending doom. You're blindsided. You're alarmed. Yeah, I get that. That's a really difficult experience. Can you feel some of that as we're talking about it?
Yeah, I think again, you know, the second part of the two issues that I had. What does this mean for the immediate future? Talking about minutes or hours, not long term. It's very unsettling to know what the forecast is going to be like.
Okay, hang on. I need you to slow down a little bit for me, okay? So what I'm hearing is that when you feel, I said to you, can you feel this feeling? You said, yeah, right? And then you said to me, and what does this mean? What does this mean? What does it mean for the future? Huh? So part of this sense of impending doom and alarm and feeling blindsided is you go up into your head and you say, oh my goodness, and what does this mean? What does this mean? What? It means that maybe I might lose my lady, or it might,
No, I don't have those fears though.
Yes.
So it's the short term.
It's like, what does this mean? Where's this going to go? Suddenly everything's uncertain.
Yes, I mean, that's what I mean.
There's no sense of control.
Yes, minutes or hours. I think that's what I was referring to. I mean, you might say, oh, that's tolerable to ride it out, but for me, it's very unsettling to know,
There's no control. You don't know what to do. You don't know how to help. You suddenly have no control. It's almost like you're helpless. Where do you feel that in your body? Can you feel a bit of that as we talk about it? What does that feel like?
Felt my throat a little bit.
Is it? It's almost like your throat closes.
Yes.
I mean, that is something that happens in alarm. We kind of go,
yeah.
You know, sometimes we stop breathing. It's kind of a startle response, right? You've been blindsided, right? Everything's going wrong. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't have a sense of control. You have this sense of helplessness. That's hard. That's hard. Have you ever told her about what that feels like? But right hear right now what you're saying to your lady is, in these moments when you are upset and angry with me, or even when you're really, really sad, I don't know what to do. I'm blindsided, I'm alarmed, I feel helpless. I don't know how to help, I don't know how to be with you. It's really, really difficult for me. I feel helpless, I don't know what to do. That's what I hear you say. I get this feeling in my throat. I go off in my head and try and figure out all the things to do. And usually that probably looks to you like I'm silent. And you feel even more alone. But actually I'm desperately trying to figure this out here so that I have some ground under my feet. Yeah. But what you're saying to her is, in these moments I feel helpless, I don't know what to do, and I'm actually scared to tell you that. That's what you're telling her? Is that alright?
Yeah, yeah.
Good. Can you tell her that?
I do, in those moments when we like disagreements or we're feeling sad, I do have tremendous difficulty in telling what I feel,
I don't know how to fix it. I'm supposed to know how to fix it. Yeah, if I'm a good husband. Yeah. I hear you. So I want you to look in her face. What do you see in her face?
I see compassion and I see a listening soul.
Yeah, nothing bad happened. Yeah.
No.
Right. Because you didn't cross complain. She didn't say, I'm upset, and you said, I'm upset too. You're right. You're a very clever guy. That doesn't work in relationships. So that's not what happened here. You shared your heart with her. Okay? And what I hear your lady asking for is for you to come close. That's just what you did right now. You did it very brilliantly. You rested, you shared your heart with her. Can you help him? What was it like for you for him to do that?
I think that was really wonderful, and I'm so happy that you could express that feeling, because then I don't feel like I'm alone in feeling sad or lonely. I feel less alone. I really appreciate you sharing that part of you, that vulnerable side. I feel almost happy that you've shared it with me.
Can you hear it?
I can.
Okay. So that was a lightning tour of EFT theory, basic clinical thing, exercise, and video, and it's rather fast. So I think we have, good Lord, we did it. Okay, we did it. And we have, okay, we actually have 10 minutes for questions. So, so here we are. So I'm open for questions.
So there's some questions about how do you break through with someone who maybe doesn't have the tools to express their emotions?
That is often true in EFT. You go slower. I mean, this is couples therapy, and this man has had a couple of sessions of EFT with another therapist, but you have to stay with people longer, and you have to go slower. So, you know, let me think about, first of all, you don't follow exits. You have to get some safety first. You let people be comfortable. You let them tell you their story. You listen to them. You reflect where they are. You do moved one of the tango, and you help them connect with that there are good reasons for where they are. And then you start to talk about, you get specific. You start to talk about specific moments when things are difficult for them, or specific things that are happening right now as they tell you a story. And you stay there, you slow down and you stay there. And, you know, let me think of my trauma lady, I'd stay there and I'd say, could you help me? You keep coming back to this image of this memory you have of your family in front of this church. And you actually drew me a drawing. You gave me a drawing of your family in front of this church, but all there was in the drawing was the church. There were no people in the drawing. And could you help me? That's interesting to me, that you sort of gave me a picture, but it was sort of a very picture of just the objects. And my sense is it was difficult for you to put the people in the picture. And she says, she changes the subject and talks about the fact that that was the day her uncle came for tea, and she remembers the day. And I say, and I listen to the story of the uncle, and then I say, could we go back? What happens to you when I ask you to think about the people who were in front of the church and what happened that day? So I go back. I don't follow the exits. I focus, and I do it with relentless empathy, and I do it with what we call, it matters how you do it. It matters how you do it. We teach, it's called risk. It's the way the therapist operates when you're asking people to take risks. You repeat yourself. Because they're overwhelmed. You're speaking to their amygdala. And the first few times you go into this alien territory, their amygdala says, get out of here, I'm not listening. The more you say it quietly and calmly, their amygdala starts to say, oh, that's not such a threat. Maybe I can take some of that in. So you repeat yourself. Risk. You use images. Images are powerful. They bring up emotions in the body. You go soft and slow and specific. The key thing with emotion is, if you've going to work with emotion, you've got to slow everything down so that you can order it with somebody. And you use the client's words. We pick up emotional handles. The emotional handle he used was blindsided and unsettled. I wrote those down. I go back to them. I use them. I bring them out into the session, right? So you simply stay there. You stay there and you go with the elements of emotion. You assemble. And if you do it, the thing about avoidance of emotion, guys, is that all the research says it's damned hard work. Suppressing emotion that was already there in your nervous system is very hard work. My friend Jim Cohn, the neuroscientist that I did a brain scan study with, you can find all the research on the ICEF site. He says that, suppressing emotion takes about 90% of the glucose going to your brain, which means there's a whole bunch of us walking around with only 10% of the glucose going. So, it's hard work. So I simply repeat it. You're not going to be able, you got to be like Hercules in terms of emotional shutdown. If a really good EFT therapist, let's personalize it. If I'm coming for you with this technique and you got to be Hercules on an emotional level to keep me out, I'm just going to keep coming. 5 times is the limit anyone's ever done it. I'll say, and that's so difficult, isn't it? When you see that look on her face and people can't keep it up. They'll go into one of the elements. They'll say, I want to get out of here. They'll give you the action tendency, and then you put that in. You say, and how does your body feel? And then they start to fill in the gaps. They just do. And then you can hold it for them. The point is, especially when you're working with trauma, and we work a lot with trauma, always have, the point is you have to respect people's tolerance and pace. So you go slow. And you take a little tiny bit at a time. And you can't tell how avoidant people are going to be and how shut down they're going to be until you start doing this with them. Because some people, you open the door and they go, oh, never seen that door before. And they go in. Other people, you open the door and they go, I don't think so. I think I just need to sit here for 6 months and look at the open door. So you have to adapt to them, and you have to respect their avoidance and go into what that's about for them. Because, and here's the thing I love about attachment, in 30 years of working with all kinds of people, it's never let me down. When I got stuck with somebody, I can remember one couple I got completely stuck with, and I got irritated with the man, and I started thinking about who referred him to me and how I could get back at them. This is not good when you're thinking about this in therapy, okay? So I got irritated with him, and then going home in the car, I thought, well, nice job, Sue. You know, why don't you just shut up and do EFT? Stop all this chatter in your head. You know, stop deciding what label applies to him. You know, I had about 8 labels from him. He came from the military psychiatrist, actually. And this guy had, I think it was 9 categories of dysfunction, which is pretty big. So I thought, just stop it and do EFT. And okay, how would what he does make sense? He is massively pushing away and getting abusive with this woman who's trying to be there for him in his panic. How would that make sense? And the point is that from the map given to you by attachment, I've never turned to that map and had it not made sense. And that's something. And that's how it always convinces me that that humanistic psychology in particular, but psychology in general, but humanistic psych, the only thing that makes sense is for us to integrate, use attachment science, integrate with it. It gives us an amazing place to stand, to do our therapy, to do a growth-orientated therapy that isn't just about giving people small moments of relief from their symptoms, which for me in therapy is the booby prize.
Thank you, Sue. Do you want to take one more question?
I'll do one more, yes.
All right, how about a simple one?
Oh, good, a simple one. All right, give me a simple one.
So there's, you know, in some older schools of thought, your attachment style is your destiny.
No.
I just wanted you to say simple.
No, it is not. That is old-fashioned. Look at the recent research. And what's more, never mind the recent research about how it's malleable. Look at our study. Look at our attachment study. You know, I'm so proud of that study. I mean, we didn't only show that we could change these people's relationships, but we showed we could change their attachment orientation. And of course it was in one specific relationship, but that's how change in attachment orientation starts. It starts in one relationship. How else is it going to change? You know, and the critics, the reviewers said, you have to call it in a specific relationship because you can't say that you change attachment. Well, you know what, I can. And we did. And they can go to hell because it was in a relationship. That's right. But guess what? When we follow those people up 3 years later, guess what? Their relationships are still stable. They still feel close and intimate, and their attachment style is still, their attachment security is rated the same. Like, I feel like writing back to those reviewers and going, see what I mean? Duh. You know, it's not just short-term change. So no, attachment can shift and change. And isn't that wonderful and helpful? But the point of it is it changes. And this came up in our recent discussion, Scott, in the panel I was just on. It changes in new interactions with others. Whereas our whole society seems to be in love with the idea that you are sufficient, you change you do more meditation, you do more exercise, you eat more, you say things to yourself when you get up. You look in the mirror and you say, God, I'm wonderful every morning. Give me a break. I mean, it just doesn't work after a while. Actually, it doesn't work for me at all. So, you know, it's like, the only people who do that are psychopaths. You know, and like, that's hardly a good model for us. So the point here is we're relational, and this is about new relationships. And the wonderful message there is, all the cliches about how love grows us are right. They're right. All the silly poems, all the, you know, it's right. The question is, how do we translate that into good therapy, into better relationship education for people? How do we translate that into, you know, helping people become more whole, that's a bit more complicated than just knowing that it's true.
Thank you, Sue.
This was fun.
This was fun. I appreciate you even sort of naming the sort of the poetry too, and just talking about love as sort of the binding agent of attachment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Isn't it time in human society that we stop talking about love as something that you fall into and fall out of, and that we have no control of it, and we learn about it so that we can actually create it? Isn't it time for that, don't you think?
I do.
Hey, especially now.
Hey, why not?
Especially now it's time. Yeah, especially now. Yeah.
Sue Johnson, Dr. Sue Johnson, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time, for your humor, for your research, and for your passions.